How's everybody doing out there? All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out. And today we indeed have a special treat, a very special guest. And, when I first learned about Cal, anyway, our special guest today is Cal Crabill. And Cal is a longtime Davis resident, and as a young boy experienced what it was like to live in the Dust Bowl days. He's one of 26 Dust Bowl survivors who were interviewed in the making of the amazing Dust Bowl documentary by Ken Burns. I'm sure most of you have seen it. I have my own personal copy of the Dust Bowl documentary by Ken Burns, and in it you can see all these little green tags. Those are places where Cal was sharing his experience of living through the Dust Bowl days. And it's fascinating to read the whole thing. And it's even more fascinating when you know somebody personally that was part of that or lived through that thing. Anyway, somebody asked me, how did I get to know Cal, or how was it that this all came about? Well, I tell you what, it came about because of, first of all, music. Cal is a music lover himself. Melvin is a music lover, and I'm a music lover. You all know that. And it's our connection and bond through music that actually led to the opportunity to make this all happen. As it was, Cal was happy, just so he used to go see Melvin and Shane and Dennis play as their acoustic blend trio. And so at some point, Melvin, got to know Cal a little bit, found out about him being part of this Dust Bowl situation. And as soon as he said it, I says, wow, what an opportunity. I have to get him here to share with you folks, because obviously, the Dust Bowl and what happened back then and the creation of the agency was very special. And so I knew you would all love to have an opportunity to hear Cal speak. So anyway, we're gonna let him share a little bit, and there'll be time for some questions as well. And then after that, the other thing we're going to do today is Melvin and I are going to share a special song that we wrote for the agency. And basically the idea for it came about as we neared our 75th anniversary of the agency. And we thought, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to write a song that would basically highlight the agency and what we're all about at that particular time. And it makes it even more special with the Dust Bowl documentary that came out and knowing Cal. So we're going to first of all, we're going to let Cal come up and speak to you, share his thoughts that he'd like to share with you. We don't have any set time limit or anything, so anyway, we'll let him talk. And then any questions anybody has, we're free to do that as well. So anyway, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Cal Crabill, one of the 26 Dust Bowl survivors who were part of the Ken Burns documentary on the Dust Bowl. So Cal, come on up.
I told Bill that he can pull the spike on me anytime he wants to, so he's the boss here right now. I just want to give you a little bit of background. I've lived in Davis since 1960. I've lived here 4 different times. I keep coming back. And if you've lived in Davis, you know why you come back. But don't ask me why I left, because they weren't very good reasons at the time, but they seemed good reasons at the time. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background of what you're looking at right now. Highway 50 goes across the country, and at various places, it's a pretty narrow trail, as you well know, if you've ever taken Highway 50. If you want to go across Nevada on Highway 50, they call it the loneliest road in the world. I knew it was the loneliest road in the world. I took it once. I'll never take it again. And neither will you probably if you think about it, because if you have car trouble, you say, this is awful. And I've seen hitchhikers on that road, and I've just been amazed that they're hitchhiking on that road, on that loneliest road in the world. Anyway, Highway 50 goes on through the Rockies and goes on into central Colorado, into Kansas. I was born at the little town of Holly, which is 5 miles from the Kansas border on Highway 50. Now Holly is important for you more than you know, because that was the birthplace of Holly Sugar. It's named after the town. Holly Sugar was named after the town because it was sugar beet country. My heritage, I want to give you a little bit of my heritage before me. My grandmother came from Denmark when she was 10 years old. And she came through Canada. I don't know why. I think they snuck through to Canada like people have done in recent years. And they came down to the States. When she went to school, she could not speak English well, and the kids made fun of her. She quit school at age 10, taught herself English, both written and spoken. My mother met her in later years. My mother was a teacher. She said she'd never heard my grandmother make a mistake in English, either written or spoken. And she taught it herself. I don't know how she did. Well, anyway, she came over when she was 10 years old. And when she was 13, she married my grandfather. 13. He was several years older, probably 10 or 15 years older. They had 10 children, 8 of them who survived to adulthood. My father was number 5 in the row. He was born when my grandmother was 21, her 5th child. She lost the first one when it was a small baby, and she lost the third one. My father was the 5th, and she expected to lose him too because she was losing one, getting one, losing one, getting one, and she expected him to die. My father, my grandparents were married in Montezuma, Kansas. Now Montezuma, Kansas is a funny little place, and I've never been there. I kick myself that I've never made the trip to get there. It's 30 miles from Dodge City, off to the southwest, and there's nothing there when you get there, but maybe that's the reason I've never gone there. But that's where they started out. My grandmother at age 13 and my grandfather. It was a homestead, which was hopeless, so then they moved to eastern Kansas, right by the Missouri border. When my father was born, that's where he was born, and they came west by covered wagon to Colorado again, the first time we went to Colorado. By covered wagon. My father was 6. He came across the plains in the covered wagon. He walked all the way, because unless you were really infirm, you walked all the way, and so he walked. When they got to the Holly area, Grenada actually, which is a little town next to Holly, they worked in the sugar beets. My father, from age 6, would work in the sugar beets till Christmas. Age 6. And then there would be some schooling, and then back in the fields probably in April, as soon as it was such. My father did that all his life. He finally graduated from elementary school when he was 18. It was really sad. That was the kind of life they lived in those days. His older brother and sister were able to qualify for a homestead. My father was not 21 at the time. The homestead land was available for them, so he never was able to homestead. So the rest of his life, he had a hard time getting land. When I was a little kid, I attended 4 different elementary schools in my first 5 years of schooling. 4 different elementary schools, because he would get a piece of land and lose it. Get a piece of land and lose it. And so we moved all over. So, and I don't think it was too bad. Actually, my first year of schooling, I rode a horse to school when I was 5 years old. I started about 3 miles away. I had to get to school on a horse. And when the hard winter came in, then I dropped out of school. I dropped out of school probably sometimes late October, early November. I never went to school after that, my first year, because the weather was just too bad. Anyway, through the years, my father would buy a place, lose it, buy a place, lose it, buy a place and lose it, and so on. And when I was about 10, we'd been in this place for 2 or 3 years, and the school I attended was, another school was about 3 miles away, and I rode a horse to school. That's how I got there. I was little and couldn't get on that horse, so I would lead the horse, there's a little barn you can keep the horse in, I'd lead the barn up to the porch of the school, and I'd climb up on the porch and then get on the horse. That's the only way I could get on the horse. If I fell off the horse, I couldn't get back on again. My job after school when I was 10 years old, and I'd done that for quite a while before that, was after school, I would have to go out and get the stock on the open range. Now, there was a lot of open range still in those days because a lot of homesteaders lost their land. They lost their land all over the place. And so there was vast amount of land that you could run your stock on for free. And so every morning my father would send the cattle out to be on this open land. At night I would bring them in. This one time, which was actually in October of 1934, at school we didn't have much for recreation at school. I think one time we had a bat and another time we had a ball, but I can't remember anything else we ever had to play with. And so you would chase tumbleweeds or you do something else to have fun, or you just chase each other like kids do. The teacher probably was vexed with the classroom, which teachers were kings in those days. They could do anything. They could beat you up if they wanted to, and that was okay. The parents wouldn't mind because that's what you got out of line at school. And I even knew a fellow that was a teacher in those days, and he says the big problem was if you couldn't whip every boy in the class, you didn't have discipline. And so the guy might be bigger than you are, but you better be able to take him down. And he told me that this one kid was bigger than he was, and he took him down, and then he didn't have trouble with him anymore. But right in the schoolroom, just boom, take him down. And that's the kind of schooling it was. It was terrible. Anyway, the teachers would get vexed with the students. Well, this one afternoon, she was vexed with us, and she had us go outside to play. As we're playing outside in the west, there was this low black cloud. We'd never seen anything like that before in our lives, just like that, all the way across. And it got higher, and we're still outside, and we were scared. The teacher said, "Children, go home now. Go home now." Well, I couldn't go home because I had to gather the stock on open range. And it took 2 or 3 hours to get that stock. Well, I went after that stock, and I did round them up. Now, my greatest fear out there on the open range, now buffalo grass can grow pretty high like when the Indians were there. If buffalo grass would have some height to it. There would be something really there, good forage for the buffalo. And a good forage for the cattle. To this day and age, it's one of the best feeds you can have for the cattle. The reason the buffalo grass is so great is because under each leaf there are seeds. The seeds for buffalo grass are underneath each leaf, and so when an animal takes the leaf, that animal is eating buffalo seeds, where the nurture is for the buffalo grass. Anyway, so I'm out there, and quite frankly, I have only 1 or 2 fears. The biggest fear I had was that my horse would step in a gopher hole. Now, gopher holes were all over the place. And if a horse stepped in a gopher hole, he'd break his leg, and I'd be off. Now, you'd say, was I afraid I'd get hurt? Not from falling off the horse. What scared the living daylights out of me was rattlesnakes. Rattlesnakes. And I'll tell you, you heard some of those early stories about rattlesnakes, it would turn you cold with the stories. My father told of going across open plains, and he saw 2 swans, or it looked like they were geese or swans, and they're like this, and they were like their heads together like this. He got closer, there were 2 rattlesnakes mating. They were over 6 feet long, he said. All he had was his horse's reins with a snap at the end. And he said, I killed both of those rattlesnakes by using the rein and snapping. He says, I don't know how I did it, but I did it. Well, you hear some few stories like that, and you say, well, if my horse steps in a badger hole, I'm going to be walking across there, and you couldn't see those snakes until you were right on him. And it's enough to chill any little kid. Well, I carried that. I'm going to get back to the story in a second. I've got to go away from it. I've got to play something in Lake County. I killed 3 rattlesnakes last summer right by my door that were 4 feet long. And they were coming at me. They weren't just waiting for me. They were coming at me. So I carried this story into my adulthood, and this was this last summer. Anyway, I still have a place up there, and so when I go up there, I look like this all the time. Anyway, so I'm out on gathering the stock, and if you've ever worked with stock, you know that there are leaders in cattle as well as in people. And so you have to know where that head cow or whatever it is in the stock will take a lead. So you hit that one and get them going, and then the others follow just like slaves, they follow right along. Well, anyway, it took me quite a while to gather the stock because they're all over the place. I was so worried about getting the stock in, and the storm was coming on all the time, coming all the time. There was a lane that once I got the stock into that lane, it was okay. I barely got all the stock in that lane, and the storm hit. All hell broke loose. I have never heard anything louder than when that storm hit. And this is what you have happening in those dust storms. It's quiet, no air moving at all, and then wham, this whole thing hits. And the thing is, I've got something for Ken that shows it's exactly like that now back there. Exactly like that right now. Everything that happened to me in those days is happening right there in the same country right now. The sad thing is, they have decimated the Ogallala aquifer, and they've taken all the water out of the ground, and so there's no water left. They're losing it all. That's the big story back there right now. That even if you wanted to stay, you couldn't because there's no water for you, even in the ground. The groundwater is gone. It's gone. Because they've grown corn and other things that they should not be growing there. They should be growing that in Iowa or someplace else rather than there. Okay. When that storm hit, my father was looking for me. He expected me to come home. He didn't expect me to go get the stock, but he was worried about me, and he came looking for me. And when he saw me, he only saw my horse, because as soon as the storm hit, I got off my horse to lead my horse, because I'm afraid the horse would rear and it'd be more dangerous. So I was leading my horse. He sees, he's coming down this lane, and he's looking, and he sees the horse with no rider, and his heart just falls. And then he saw me, and then that was it. Now after that time, this was October or so of '34, we lost everything we had within 6 months. Within 6 months, things got so bad so fast. We lost all our cattle, my father lost all his horses, and we decided, it was the 23rd, on the 23rd of May, we put up stakes and came to California, in Southern California. The poor people that stayed, they had a very rough time. From getting rid of some of his stock, we were able to make it to Southern California, but the money didn't last. We lost it there. I was grateful that I didn't come to the Central Valley, because I'd still be working in the farms myself, probably, if I had. But I grew up in Burbank, and so it was a completely different environment, and I had some chances that I never had someplace else. Now, I don't know for sure if I've given you enough to come back at me with some questions, but you might have some questions.
Well, Gal, you mentioned, in our conversations with Melba and I earlier about jumping out of a loft of a barn into a pile of dust and stuff like
what
that. That was your
happens
fun, right?
With these homesteaders, they would build something with very little money. That's why they had adobe houses, because they just used earth to do it. But the other thing is, they'd make a barn. They'd have a flat roof. Now, why did they have a flat roof? They expected to get some money someday and then make a loft. But amazing how many barns you saw that never had a loft. They were just flat top. Well, when the dust storms were hitting hard, there's one fun game we would try to do. The dust would pile up just like snow does in the wintertime with drifts of snow. Well, the dust would pile like that. And then these flat barns, it was fun to run and jump off into that pile. We just leap off, and you wouldn't get hurt. You just jump and leap off into the thing. The only thing is, this one barn where we're doing it, there was a silo each side. We'd jump off. There's a silo 90 feet deep here, and then a silo 90 feet. I don't know, we were crazy. If we had misjudged which one we're jumping off, we would have gone in the silo. So we didn't think about that.
You say you haven't been back there for a long time?
I was there, the last time I was there was, I think, in April of this last year.
Well, as far as the land at that time, there was a lot of homesteading and so forth. There was a lot of land that was broken out. And so that's why a lot of the land, was would erode, from the wind.
That's right.
Now with minimum of tillage or no tillage that they're practicing back there. I just wondered if things would ever happen the same.
Well, I have an article, the Denver Post, that negates everything you're saying right now. And that's what's sad. And it shocked Bill, and it shocked me when I got it.
Well, I was going to say, I've heard some stories that certain areas back there that they are indeed experiencing some significant wind erosion. So I don't know whether I don't know what the soil or NRCS is doing or what, but there's some areas back there where people claim it's as bad as that it's really bad. In other words, they are experiencing some of the same things. Now, I'm sure it's not the widespread area, but there's definitely areas back there where they have a real problem still. Or not still, but they have a real problem now. So it'd be real interesting to talk to agency folks back in those areas and just see what's causing, what's going on now that's changed and made things worse again. So, but I've had several people tell me that, and I'm anxious to read Cal's article because always that's really bad. So anyway, but are there some other questions for Cal?
You answered one other thing about his here, just a second.
Yeah, go right ahead.
The reason I worked this film with Ken Burns is that I was watching Channel 6, and there was a little note on there, if you have such a background, let us know, and I did, and it got to Ken Burns, and then I was in contact with him. The reason I volunteered, only one reason that I volunteered to work on that film was in memory of my father, because I knew he had the right idea. And early in the film, I stayed in that film that my father always knew it was supposed to be buffalo country and not country where you plowed up the land. It was not made for that. It was made for Indians and buffalo, or for stock. It was good stock land. And so that's what the difference is. And that when you turn it over, in fact, one of the statements in the film, I think, or in the book, it's either in the book or the film, where this old Indian says, the earth is upside down. When you turn the earth upside down back there, it will blow. If it left it in its natural state, it would not have been a problem.
I was just going to say, I was raised in Texas Panhandle. My mom and dad got married January 1935. And first I heard a lot of stories from my kinfolks. Just everybody had a house back there. And you had a drain shovel in the house, the broom. The dirt blew in just like you're talking about. All the corners of the houses had dresses. They hang sheets up. If you had any water, you keep them wet with something. If you're lucky, that was water. I was in the 6th grade. I saw one of these storms. I woke up one morning when I was in 6th grade. They never got daylight.
Yeah.
It was dark at noon. It was at midnight. It was starting to rain. And I remember the mud drops. It just rained mud drops.
My father cleaned the house after a dust storm with a scoop shovel, and I mean a scoop shovel.
Yeah, drain,
Scoop
big
shovel.
scoop shovel.
Scoop shovel, that's how you clean the house. Any others? Thank you.
How about a hand for Cal?